All right, guys. We're live with the 10th book of Chapman's Homer, where Diomedes and Odysseus are going to be brought out onto a night attack onto the Trojan camp to try and, first of all, I think gain some info, but also to deteriorate them a little bit as a way to aid the Greek cause, which is in dire straits at the moment following that embassy to Achilles in Book 9. And here is Chapman's argument. Atrides watching, wake the other peers, and in the fort consulting of their fears, 2 kings they send, most stout and honoured most, for royal scouts into the Trojan host, who meeting Dolon, Hector's bribed spy, take him and learn how all the quarters lie. He told them in the Thracian regiment of rich King Rhesus, and his royal tent, striving for safety, but they end his strife, and rid poor Dolon of a dangerous life. Then with digressive wiles they use their force on Rhesus's life and take his snowy horse. Cap of the night exploit supplies Rhesus and Dolon's tragedies. The other princes at the ship soft-fingered sleep did bind, but not the general, somnoless as silk, span not his labouring mind, that turned and returned many thoughts, and as quickening lightnings fly, from well-decked Juno's sovereign out of the thickened sky, preparing some exceeding rain or hail, the fruit of cold, or down like snow that suddenly makes all the fields look old, or opes the gulfy mouth of war with his ensulfured hand, and dazzling flashes poured from clouds on any punished land. So from Atrides' troubled heart, through his dark sorrows flew redoubted sighs, his entrails shook as often as his view admired the multitude of fires that gilt the Phrygian shade, and heard the sounds of fifes and shawms and tumults soldiers made. But when he saw his fleet and host kneel to his care and love, he rent his hair up by the roots as sacrifice to Jove, burnt in his fiery sighs, still breathed out of his royal heart, and first thought good to Nestor's, cared his sorrows to impart, to try if royal diligence with his approved advice might fashion counsels to prevent their threatened miseries. So up he rose, attired himself, and to his strong feet tied rich shoes, and cast upon his back a ruddy lion's hide. So ample it his ankles reached, then took his royal spear. Like him was Menelaus pierced with an industrious fear, nor sat sweet slumber in his eyes, lest bitter fates should quite the Greeks' high favours that for him resolve such endless fight. And first a freckled panther's hide hid his broad back athwart, his head his brazen helm did arm, his able hand his dart. Then made he all his haste to raise his brother's head as rare, that he who most excelled in rule might help defect his care. He found him at his ship's crooked stern, adoring him with arms, who joyed to see his brother's spirits awake without alarms, well weighing the importance of the time, and first the younger spake. Why, brother, are ye arming thus? Is it to undertake the sending of some venturous Greek to explore the foe's intent? Alas, I greatly fear not one will give that work consent, exposed alone to all the fears of flow and gloomy night. He that doth this must know death well, in which ends every fight. Brother, said he, in these affairs we both must use advice. Jove is against us, and accepts great Hector's sacrifice. For I have never seen nor heard in one day and by one so many high attempts well urged, as Hector's power hath done, against the hapless sons of Greece, being chiefly dear to Jove, and without cause being neither fruit of any goddess's love, nor helpful god, and yet I fear the deepness of his hand, ere it be raised out of our thoughts. Well, many years would stand, but, brother, hie thee to thy ships, and Idomene's disease with warlike Ajax I will haste to grave near Iliad, exhorting him to rise and give him sacred watch command, for they will specially embrace the incitement at his hand. And now his son their captain is, and Idomene's good friend, bold Merion, to whose discharge we did that charge commend. Commandst thou then, his brother asked, that I shall tarry thee, Attending thy resolved approach, or else the message bear, and quickly make return to thee, he answered, rather stay, lest otherwise we fail to meet for many a different way. Lies through our labyrinthian host, speak ever as you go. Command strong watch from sire to son, urge all to observe the foe, familiarly and with their praise exciting every eye, not with unseasoned violence of proud authority. We must our patience exercise and work ourselves with them, Jove and our births combined, such care to either's diadem. Thus he dismissed him, knowing well his charge before he went, himself to Nestor, whom he found in bed within his tent. By him his damask, currets hung, his shield a pair of darts, his shining casque, his arming waist, and in these he led the hearts of his apt soldiers. To sharp war, not yielding to his years, he quickly started from his bed, when to his watchful ears untimely feet told some approach. He took his lance in hand and spake to him, Ho! What art thou that walk'st at midnight? Stand. Is any wanting at the guards? Lackst thou any peer? Come, speak. Come not silent towards me, say what the intents thou here. He answered, O Iliades, grave honour of our host is Agamemnon thou mayst know, whom Jove afflicted most. Of all our wretched men that live and will, whilst any breathe, give motion to my toiled limbs and bears me up from death. I walk the round thus, since sweet sleep cannot enclose mine eyes, nor shut those organs. Care breaks ope for our calamities. My fear is vehement for the Greeks, my heart the fount of heat. With his extreme effects made cold, without my breast doth beat, and therefore are my sinews struck with trembling every part. Of what my friends may feel hath act in my dispersed heart. But if thou thinkst of any course, may to our good redound, since neither thou thyself canst sleep. Come, walk with me the round, and way whereof we may confer, and luck to every guard, lest watching long and weariness, with labouring so hard, drown our oppressed memories of what they have in charge. The liberty we give to foe, alas, is overlarge. Their camp is almost mixed with ours, and we have forth no spies to learn their drifts, who may perchance this night intend surprise. Grave Nestor answered, Worthy king, let good hearts bear our ill. Jove is not bound to perfect all this busy Hector's will. But I am confidently given. His thoughts are much dismayed, with fear lest our distress incite Achilles to our aid, and therefore will not tempt his fate nor ours with further pride. But I will gladly follow thee, and stir up more beside Diomedes, famous for his lance, Ulysses, Telamon, and bold Phyleus, valiant heir, or else, if any one would haste to call King Idomen, Dyax, since their sail I so removed, so much good speed it might our haste avail. But though he be our honoured friend, thy brother I will blame, not fearing if I anger thee, it is his utter shame he should commit all plains to thee, that should himself employ, past all our princes in the care and cure of our annoy. Be so far from needing spurs to these his due respects, he should apply our spirits himself with prayers and urged effects. Necessity, a law to laws, and not to be endured, makes proof of all his faculties, not sound of it inured. Good father, said the king, sometimes you know I have desired you would improve his negligence, too oft to ease tired. Nor is it for defect of spirit or to compose of his brain, but with observing my estate he thinks he should abstain till I commanded, knowing my place unwilling to assume. For being my brother anything might prove he did presume. But now he rose before me far, and came to avoid delays, and I have sent him for the men yourself desired to raise. Come, you shall find them at the guards, placed before the fort, for thither my direction was they should with speed resort. Why now? Said Nestor. None will grudge, for his just rule withstand. Examples make excitements strong, and sweeten a command. Thus put he on his arming truss, fair shoes upon his feet, about him a mandilion, that did with buttons meet, of purple large, full of folds, curled up in a warmful nap, a garment that gainst colder nights did soldiers use to wrap. Then took he his strong lance in hand, made sharp with proved steel, and went along Grecian fleet first at Ulysses' keel. He called to break the silken fumes that did his senses bind. The voice through the organs of his ears straight rung about his mind. Forth came Ulysses, asking him, "Why stir ye thus so late? Sustain we such enforcive cause?" He answered, "Our estate doth force this perturbation. Vouchsafe it, worthy friend, and come, let us excite one more to counsel of some end to our extremes by fight or flight." He back took his shield, and both took course to Diomed. They found him laid in field. Far from his tent his armour by about him was dispread. A ring of soldiers, every man his shield beneath his head. His spear fixed by him as he slept, the great end in the ground. The point that bristled the dark earth cast a reflection round. Laid pallid lightnings thrown from Jove, thus this hero lay, and under him a big ox hide his royal head had stay. On Aras hangings rolled up, whereon he slept so fast that Nestor stirred him with his foot, and chid him to see cast. In such deep sleep, in such deep woes, and asked him why he spent all night in sleep, or did not hear the Trojans near his tent, their camp drawn close upon the dike, small space twixt foes and foes. He, starting up, said, "Strange old man, that never tasked repose, thou art patient of our toil. Have we not men more young to be employed from king to king? Thine age hath too much wrong." "Said like a king," replied the sire, "for I have sons renowned, and there are many other men might go to this toilsome round. But you must see imperious need, all at her command. And now the eager razed edge, for life or death we stand. Then go, thou art the younger man, and if thou love my ease, call swift-foot Ajax up thyself, and young Iliad." This said he, on his shoulders cast a yellow lion's hide, big and reached earth. Then took his spear and Nestor's will applied, raised the heroes and brought them both. All met. The round they went, and found not any captain there asleep or negligent, but waking in arms, gave ear to every lowest sound. And as keen dogs keep sheep in cotes or folds of hurdles bound, and grin at every breach of air, envious of all that moves, still listening when the ravenous beasts stalks through the hilly groves. Then men and dogs on their guards and mighty tumults make. Sleep wanting, wait to close one wink, so did their captains wake, that kept the watch the whole sad night with all intective ear, converted to the enemy's tents that they might timely hear, if they were stirring to surprise, which Nestor's joyed to see. "Why so, dear sons, maintain your watch, sleep not a wink," said he, "rather than make your fames the scorn of Trojan perjury." This said, he foremost passed the dike, the others seconded, even all the kings that had been called to council from the bed, and with them went Meriones and Nestor's famous son, for both were called by all the kings to this consultation. Beyond the dike they chose a place, near as they could from blood, where yet appeared the falls of some, whence from crimson flood of Grecian lives being poured on earth by Hector's furious chase, he made retreat when night repoured grim darkness in his face. There sat they down, and Nestor spake, "O friends, remains not one that will rely on his bold mind and view the camp alone of the proud Trojans that prove in any straggling mate. He can surprise near the utmost tent, or learn the brief estate of their intentions for the time, and mix like one of them with their outguards, expiscating if the renowned extreme they force on us will serve their turns, their glory to retire. Still can encamp us thus far from Troy, this may he well inquire, and make a brave retreat untouched, and this would win him fame. Of all men canopied with heaven, and every man of name in all this host shall honour him with an enriching meed, a black ewe and her suckling lamb rewards that now exceed all other best possessions. In all men's choice requests, still be bidden by our kings to kind and royal feasts. All reverenced one another's worth, and none would silence break, lest worst should take best place of speech. At last did Diomedes speak, Nestor, thou asked if no man here can have heart so well inclined to work this stratagem on Troy. Yes, I have such a mind. If some other prince would join, more probable will be the strengthened hope of our exploit. Two may together see, one going before, another still sly danger every way. One spirit upon another works, and takes with firmer stay benefit of all his powers, for though he one knew his course, yet might he well distrust himself, which the other might enforce. This offer every man assumed, or would with Diomed go. The two Iases, Meryon, and Menelaus too. But Nestor's son enforced it much, and hardy Ithacus, who had to every venturous deed a mind as venturous. Amongst all these thus spake the king, Diomedes most beloved, choose thy associate worthily, a man the most approved, for use and strength in these extremes many thou seest stand forth, but choose not thou by height of place, but by regard of worth. Lest with thy nice respect of right to any man's degree, thou wrong'st thy venture, choosing one least fit to join with thee, although perhaps a greater king. This spake he would suspect that Diomed for honour's sake his brother would select. Then said Tydides, since thou givest my judgment leave to choose, how can it so much truth forget Ulysses to refuse? That bears a mind so most exempt, and vigorous in effect, of all high labours, and a man Pallas doth most respect. We shall return through fire burning, if I with him combine. He sets the strength in so true course, with counsels so divine. Ulysses, loath to be esteemed a lover of his praise, with such exception humbled him as did him higher raise, and said to Tydides, praise me not more, for the free truth will bear. Yet impair me, they are Greeks that give judicial ear, but come, the morning hastes, the stars are forward in their course. 2 parts of night are past, the third is left to employ our force. Now borrowed they for haste some arms, bold Thrasymedes lent. Adventurous Diomed, his sword, his own was at his tent. His shield and helm tough, when well tanned, without plume or crest, and called a Myrmian archer's heads it used to invest. Meriones lent Ithacus his quiver and his bow. His helmet fashioned of a hide the workman did bestow, much labour in it, quilting it with bowstrings and without, with snowy tusks of white-mouthed boars 'twas armoured round about. Right cunningly, and in the midst an arming cap was placed, that with the fixed ends of the tusks his head might not be raised. This long since by Autolycus was brought from Ilion, when he laid waste Amintor's house that was Ormenus' son, in Scandia to Cythereus, surnamed Amphidamas. Autolycus did give him his helm, when he feasted was. By honoured Molus gave it him at present of a guest. Molus to his son Meryon did make his bequest. With this Ulysses armed his head, and thus they both addressed. Took leave of all the other kings, to them a glad ostent. As they were entering on their way, Minerva did present a hernshaw consecrate to her, which they could ill discern through sable night, but by her clang they knew it was a hern. Ulysses joyed, and thus invoked, hear me, great seed of Jove, that ever dost my labours grace with presence of thy love, and all my motions dost attend, still love me, sacred dame, especially in this exploit, and so protect our fame. We both may safely make retreat, and thriftily employ our boldness in some great affair, baneful to them of Troy. Then prayed illustrate Diomed, vouchsafe me likewise ear. O thou unconquered queen of arms, be with thy favours near, as to my royal father's steps thou wentst a bounteous guide, when the Achives and the peers of Thebes he would have pacified, sent as the Greeks' ambassador, and left them at the flood of great Aesopus, whose retreat thou madest to swim in blood of his ambushed enemies. And if thou so protect my bold endeavours to thy name, an effort most select, that never yet was tamed with oak broad fonted 1 year old, I'll burn in zealous sacrifice, and set the horns in gold. The goddess heard, and both the kings their dreadless passage bore, Through slaughtered carcasses, arms, and discoloured gore. Nor Hector led his princes sleep, but all to council called and asked what one is here will vow and keep it unappalled, to have a gift for his deed, a chariot and 2 horse, to pass for speed the rest of Greece, what one dares take this course. For his renown beside his gifts to mix amongst the foe, and learn if they hold their guards, or with this overthrow determined flight has been too weak to hold us longer war. All silent stood. At last stood forth one Dolon that did dare this dangerous work. Diomedes his heir, a herald much renowned. This Dolon did in gold and brass exceedingly abound, but in his form was quite deformed, passing swift to run. Amongst 5 sisters he was left, Diomedes his only son, and he told Hector his free heart would undertake to explore the Greeks' intentions. But, said he, thou shalt be sworn before, by this thy sceptre, that the horse of great Diomedes, and his strong chariot bound with brass, thou wilt before all these resign me as my valor's prize, and so I rest unmoved to be thy spy, and not return before I have approved, by venturing to Atreides' ships, where their consults are held. And if they resolve still to resist or fly as quite expelled, he put his sceptre in his hand, called the thunder's god, Saturnius' husband. To his oak those horse should not be rode by any other man than he, but he forever joy. To his renown their services, for his good done to Troy. Thus he swore, and forswore himself. Yet made base Dolon bold, who on his shoulders hung his bow, and did about him fold a white wolf's hide, and with a helm of weasel skins did arm his weasel's head, then took his dart, and never turned to harm. The Greeks with their related drifts, but being past the troops of horse and foot, he promptly runs. As he runs, he stoops to undermine Achilles' horse. Ulysses straight did see, and said to Diomed, this man makes footing towards thee. Out of the tents, I know not well if he be used as spy, bent to our fleet, or come to rob the slaughtered enemy. But let us suffer him to come a little further on, then pursue him, if it chance we be overgone. By his more swiftness urge him still to run upon our fleet, and lest he scape us to the town, still let thy javelin meet with all his offers to retreat. Thus stepped they from the plain. Amongst the slaughtered carcasses Dolon came on the main, suspecting nothing. Once past, as far as mules outdraw, oxen at plough being both put on, neither admitted law. To plough a deep-soiled furrow fort, so far was Dolon past, then they pursued which he perceived, and stayed his speedless haste, subtly supposing Hector spent to countermand his spy. But in a javelin throw or less he knew them enemy. Then laid he on his nimble knees, and they pursued like wind, as when a brace of greyhounds are laid within hare and hind, close-mouthed and skilled, to make the best of their industrious course, serve either's turn, and then set on hard, loose neither ground nor force. So constantly did Tydeus' son, and his town-raising peer, pursue this spy, still turning him as he was winding near his covert, till he almost mixed with their outcourts of guard. Then Pallas prompted Diomed, lest his due worth's reward should be impaired if any man did vaunt, he first did sheath his sword in him. And he be called, put second in his death, then spake he, threatening with his lance, or stay this comes on. Long thou canst not run before thou be by death outgone. This said, he threw his javelin forth, which missed as Diomed would. Above his right arm making way, the pile struck in the mould. He stayed and trembled, and his teeth did chatter in his head. They came in blowing, seized him fast. He weeping offered a wealthy ransom for his life. Told them he had brass, much gold and iron, that fit for use in many labours was, from whose rich heaps his father would a wondrous portion give, if at the great Dacian fleet he heard his son did live. Ulysses bade him cheer his heart. Think not of death, said he, but tell us true, why runn'st thou forth when others sleeping be? Is it not spoil the carcasses, or art thou choicely sent to explore our drifts, or of thyself seek'st thou some wished event? He trembling answered, much reward did Hector's oath purpose, and urged me much against my will, to endeavour to disclose. Few determined still to stay, or bent your course for flight, as all dismayed with your late foil, and wearied with the flight, for which to exploit Pelides' horse and chariot he did swear, I only ever should enjoy. Ulysses smiled at hear. So base a swain have any hope, so high a prize to spire, and said his labours did effect great and precious hire, that the horse Pelides reigned no mortal hand could use, but he himself, whose matchless life a goddess did produce. But tell us, and report but truth, where left'st thou Hector now? Where are his arms, his famous horse, on whom doth he bestow the watch's charge? Where sleep the kings? Tend they still to lie thus near encamped, or turn sufficed with their late victory? All this, said he, I'll tell most true, at Ilus' monument, Hector, with all his princes, sits to advise of this event, who choose a place removed to shun the rude confused sounds the common soldiers throw about, but for our watch and rounds, whereof, brave lord, thou makest demand, none orderly we keep. The Trojans, that have roofs to save, only abandon, sleep. Privately without command each other they exhort, and make prevention for the worst. And in this slender sort, as watch and guard maintained with us, the auxiliary bands, sleepy soundly, commit their cares into the Trojan hands, for they have neither wives with them, nor children to protect. The less they need to care, the more this occur dull neglect. But tell me, said wise Isychus, are all these foreign powers pointed quarters by themselves, or else commixed with yours? And this, said Dolon, to my lords I'll seriously unfold. The peons with the crooked bows and Ceres quarters hold. Next to the sea, the Leleges and Corcons joined with them, and brave Pelasgians. Thumber's mead removed more from the stream is quartered to the Lycians, the lofty Mysian force, the Phrygians and Maeonians, that fight with armoured horse. But what need these particulars if ye intend surprise? Of any in our Trojan camps, the Thracian quarter lies at most of all unmixed the Trojan regiments that keep the voluntary watch, now pitched at all their tents. King Rhesus, Aeneas' son, commands them, who hath steeds, yet steeds more white than snow, huge, well shaped, with fiery pace exceeds winds and swiftness. These I saw, his chariot is with gold and pallid silver, richly framed, wondrous to behold. His great and golden armour is not fit a man should wear, but for immortal shoulders framed. Come then, and quickly bear your happy prisoner to your fleet, or leave him here fast bound, till your well-urged and rich return prove my relation sound. Tydides dreadfully replied, think not of passage thus, though of right acceptable news thou hadst advertised us. Our hands are held more strict than so, and should we set thee free, for offered ransom for the escape, thou still wouldst be scouting be. About our ships do us scathe in plain opposed arms, but if I take thy life, no way can we repent thy harms. With this, as Dolon reached his hand to use a suppliant's part, stroke the beard of Diomed, he struck his neck athwart. With his forced sword, and both the nerves did in sunder wound, and suddenly his head deceived fell speaking on the ground. His weaseled helm they took, his bow, his wolf skins, and his lance, which to Minerva Ithacus did zealously advance. With lifted arm into the air, and to her thus he spake, Goddess, triumph in thine own spoils, to thee we first will make our invocations of all powers throned on the Olympian hill. Now to the Thracians and their horse and beds conduct us still. With this he hung them up aloft upon the tamarisk bough, as eyeful trophies in the sprigs that did about it grow. He pointed from the leafy arms to make it easier viewed, when they should hastily retire and be perhaps pursued. Forth went they through the black blood and arms, and presently espied the guardless Thracian regiment, fast bound with sleep and tired. Their arms lay by, and triple Triple ranks they, as they slept, did keep, as they should watch and guard their king, who in a fatal sleep lay in the midst. Their chariot horse, as they coach fellows were, fed by them, and the famous steeds that did their general bear, stood next to him to the hinder part of rich chariot tide. Ulysses saw them first, and said to Tydeus, I have spied the horse that Dalon, whom he slew, assured us we should see. Now use thy strength, now idle arms are most unfit to thee. Prize thou the horse, or kill the guard, and leave the horse to me. Minerva with the azure eyes breathed strength into her king, who filled the tent with mixed death. The souls he set on wing, it shewed on groans, and made air swell her stormy flood. Horror and slaughter had one power. The earth did blush with blood. As when a hungry lion flies with purpose to devour on flocks unkempt, and on their lives doth freely use his power, so today as the sun assailed the foe, 12 souls before him flew. Ulysses waited on his sword, and ever as he slew, he drew them by the strengthless heels, and of the horses slight. And when he was to lead them forth, they should not with affright boggle nor snore in treading on the bloody carcasses. For being new come, they were unused to such stern sights as these. Through 4 ranks did not Diomedes the king himself attain, who snoring in his sweetest sleep was like his soldiers slain. An ill dream by Minerva sent that night stood by his head, which was Iliad's royal unconquered Diomed. Meanwhile Ulysses loosed his horse, took all their reins in hand, and led them forth. But today as the sun did in contention stand, with his great mind to do some deed more audacity. If he should take the chariot, where his rich arms did lie, draw it back, the beam away, or bear it on his back. Or if of more dull Thracian lives he should their bosoms sack. In this contention with himself Minerva did suggest, and bade him think of his retreat, lest from their templed rest some other god should stir the foe, and send him back dismayed. He knew the voice, took horse, and fled, the Trojans' heavenly aid. Apollo with the silver bow stood no blind sentinel to the secure and drowsy host, but did discover well Minerva following Diomed, and angry with this act, the mighty host of Ilion he entered and awaked the cousin German of the king, the counsellor of Thrace, Hippocon, who when he rose and saw the desert place where Rhesus' horse did use to stand in other dismal harms, men struggling with the pangs of death, he shrieked out thick alarms, called Rhesus, Rhesus, but in vain. Then still, arm, arm, he cried. The noise and tumult was extreme on every startled side, and Troy's huge host, from whence in throngs all gathered and admired, who could perform such harmful facts, and yet be safe retired. Now coming where they slew the scout, Ulysses stayed the steeds, Tydeus lighted, and the spoils hung on the tarmac reeds. He took and gave to Ithacus, and up he got again. Men flew the joyful to their fleet. Nestor first did attain the sounds of horse hoofs, struck through air, and said, My royal peers, do I but dote, or say I true? Methinks about mine ears the sound of running horses beat. Would to God they were our friends thus soon return with spoils, but I have hardly fear, lest this high tumult of the foe doth their distress intend. He scarce had spoke when they were come, both did from horse descend, all with embraces and sweet words to heaven their worth did raise. Then Nestor spake, Great Ithacus, even heaped with Grecian praise, how have you made these horse your prize? Pierced with your dangerous host, where such gems stand, or did some god your high attempts accost? Honoured you with this reward, why, they be like the rays the sun effuseth. I have mixed with Trojans all my days, and now I hope you will not say I always lie abroad. One old soldier I must confess, yet did old Troy afford never the like to any sense that ever have I possessed. But some good god, no doubt, hath met, and your high valour's blessed. For he that shadows heaven with the clouds loves both as his delights, and she that supples earth with blood cannot forbear your sights. And Ulysses answered, Honoured sire, the willing gods can give. Horse much more worth than these men yield, since in more power they live. These horse are of the Thracian breed, that King Tydides slew, and 12 of his most trusted guard, and of the meaner crew. Scout for 13th man we killed, whom Hector sent to spy. The whole estate of our designs, if bent to fight or fly. Thus followed with the whole troops of friends, they with applauses passed the spacious dyke, and in the tent of Diomed they placed the horse without contention as his deservings meed, which with his other horse set up on yellow wheat did feed. Poor Dolon's spoils Ulysses had, who shrined them on his stern, as trophies vowed to her that sent the good aboding hern. Then entered they the mere main sea, to cleanse their honoured sweat from off their feet, their thighs, and necks. And when their vehement heat was calmed, and their swollen hearts refreshed, more curious baths they used, what odorous and dissolving oils there through their limbs diffused. Then, taking breakfast, a big bowl filled with the purest wine, they offered to the maiden queen that hath the azure eyne.